Hello and a very warm welcome back to the garden. Now it might be July, but it doesn't mean that the sowing season is over. In fact, it is far from over. And I've been inspired by my friend Liz Zorab, who did a fantastic video the other year about what crops to sow in July, by sharing with you what I think, in my personal opinion, are the 10 most productive crops that you can sow this month. So I'm just going through this kohlrabi here and getting rid of the lower yellow leaves just to keep it nice and healthy. And kohlrabi is in fact the first crop. So this video is about if you're growing in primarily zone 7 and zones 8. And kohlrabi is one of those crops that you can sow over the next 2 to 3 weeks. This is Purple Delicacy here, by far my favorite variety. You can either sow them direct, but what I prefer to do is just start them off in a module seed tray like this, thin to one plant per cell, and then when they're about, I don't know, 5 to 7 centimeters, so 2 to 3 inches tall, transplant them out into their final growing position. And you can grow these quite close, and they're really productive, fast maturing, and add a nice variety of color to kind of your autumn garden. So the second crop is actually my personal favorite crop to sow in July, because it's such a staple for me up until around Christmas time, because it stores in the ground where you plant it up around Christmas, and that is beetroot. I've got 3 rows here. This is beetroot Bolt Hardy of multi-sown clumps. So that's 4 to 6 plants on average that are all growing, and you can direct sow beetroot, you'll just need to thin them out. Multi-sowing is easier because thinning is super simple when they're grown in modules. You transplant them out and you have that instant impact. So over the next week or two, maybe start a couple of module trays full of multi-sown beetroots, and this is something you can start harvesting around September onwards. And the other thing is, when they're grown, you can use the leaves and add these into your salads. The next crop is something that I love having in the garden so much because it looks different to a lot of the other things that I'm growing, and it's fennel. You can use these leaves as garnishes, you can eat these raw, chuck them into salads, or you can let them bulb and you can do all sorts of things. Roasted fennel is one of my favorites. Another thing I like to do as well is to do a simple pickled fennel. And in terms of starting these, over the next 2 weeks is prime time. Fennel doesn't actually really enjoy hot weather, so if you start them in modules over the next couple of weeks and you transplant them 2 weeks later, so just before August, that means that the temperatures are beginning to cool and they're going to enjoy it and flourish and thrive and give you a really fantastic harvest all through autumn and even into early winter. Another crop that prefers cooler weather is Swiss chard. So I grew Bright Lights here, which is just a mix of different varieties of different colours. For example, I got a nice kind of reddy pinky variety here, and this is more of a white beet variety. And Swiss chard is great for sowing after the heat of summer, so anywhere kind of from mid-July onwards. I started this off early because even when it bolts, you can still eat these leaves. These are going to seed, but it doesn't matter. I just wanted something nice and colourful to add to salads, and I've still got a very respectable harvest. But if you want a truly good Swiss chard harvest, start them around the end of the first week into the second and third week of July. I prefer to start them off in modules and then transplant them, and then you're going to get crops right into autumn, and you can leave them in the ground, protect the crowns, just mulch them with a bit of compost or something, and then come spring they're going to send up a flourish of new growth, so you're going to have spring greens in effect that you can enjoy during the hungry gap, so March, April, May, before they then eventually run to seed. Another plant worthy of the top 10 list is kale. Now, you might not know it, I've got 7 different varieties of kale in front of me. Now, usually you start off kale in April and May and then transplant it in June and July, but there's no stopping you starting off kale in early July, growing them on, then growing them on further in pots. And once things like your tomatoes are cleared out from your undercover growing space, such as the solar tunnel behind me, you can then transplant the kale into your undercover growing space and grow them undercover through winter, which means you're going to get a really nice harvest from that space, and you're going to help make that space nice and productive. One of the most important crops to sow in July is actually your winter radish. Winter radish tends to be a lot more productive than, say, your spring and summer radish. And the other benefit is it can store in the ground, usually until January and February. That's when we were harvesting ours. So anything like a black Russian radish or something like daikon radish, which is what I'm sitting next to at the moment, I'm not really going to dare pull out another plant, but the roots are seriously getting really deep. So I'm getting excited about that. Now with winter radish, you can start them off in modules, but for me, what I prefer to do is just sow them thinly, directly where they're going to grow, thin them out if needed, and I think that's how they produce the best quality roots. As I'm sitting almost on this squeaky onion, I'm next to the next crop. And I'm cheating a bit. It's not one crop, it's a triplet of crops, and they all come under one umbrella, and those are annual herbs, which is something I'm spending a lot of time and dedicating a bit more space this year in growing. So in front of me here, I've got confetti coriander, never grown that before, easily confused with dill, and then more easily distinguished is this parsley here. And these are things, I've got some more dill as well. You can see I'm growing tons. I've got more parsley around here. It's absolutely amazing. And I've got some caraway hiding around the corner. But with dill, parsley, coriander, these actually prefer cooler weathers as well, especially things like coriander. So start them off over the next couple of weeks. I tend to do modules for parsley and coriander. Now with dill, it is recommended to sow them direct. I haven't done that. There's two salad crops that you can start off side by side that work really well when started in July and even into early August. Those of course are going to be your lettuce and your spinach. Things like spinach matador are great because they're more resilient to bolting, which is something that you really want to go for. But one of the best ways to prevent issues happening with bolting is sowing a little bit, little and often. So even if an earlier crop runs to seed, you've always got crops coming up as kind of succession crops to replace them. And these are things that you can either sow direct, like here, or you can start them off in modules and then transplant them at a later date. If you're growing your winter radishes, then next to them you might as well grow a load of turnips. Here we've got Snowball. I'm just pulling this out. You can see how beautiful this crop is. So whether it's varieties like golden turnip, snowball turnip, purple top Milan, they give you kind of a wide variety of things to try out, different flavors, different colors. And the great thing about turnip as well is that it stores really well in the ground until kind of January time. And even though turnips, if they get a bit woody because of the heat, they don't really seem to reach that really woody turnipy stage as much during the cooler weather. So this is something to very much consider and sow direct. Now for any turnips you don't happen to harvest during winter, you can still leave the roots in because come spring they'll send up a flourish of new growth, and you can actually eat turnip leaves. You can lightly cook them or choose the younger ones, the fresher ones to add into salads for kind of a very mild and a very pleasant turnipy flavour. You may be surprised to hear that potatoes actually make this list, but it's not your usual potato varieties that if you plant in July are just going to get absolutely obliterated by blight. It's actually blight resistant varieties. So my friend Adam Jones from Adam and Ardd swears by growing Sarpomeras for his Christmas crop. And these are things which I'm currently growing here in this container that you can plant in containers in say July and August. And what ends up happening is you start getting a load of spuds in autumn. You can cut the leaves off and then it means you can store say these containers in a garage or something, and then when it comes to time when you want to harvest them, all you do is go in, tip out one of your containers, and you've got fresh potatoes for your Christmas dinner. This video isn't sponsored, but I wanted to give a shout out to a seed company I very much rate, created by Fred and Ronya, who are the creators of Vital Seeds. And they've got a great offer at the moment if you are interested in a seed collection called the Second Spring. So it includes a few things that I've mentioned and a load of other varieties that you can sow in kind of July, August time to enjoy those harvests later on this year. So if it sounds like something you're interested in, there'll be a link down below. Now at this time of year, there's actually a surprising amount of change that's happening in the garden. You might start having things like your broad beans coming out, your onions, your garlic. For me today, it was harvesting the potatoes, the not so new potatoes. That was a great fun. And I've now got this empty bed, which I can fill up with particular things. So as those gaps begin to emerge throughout July and August, I really hope this video is going to help you to plan ahead, think ahead, to start sowing things in modules or to start purchasing seeds that you need to start filling those gaps and increasing the productivity of your kitchen garden. So thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to ask me down below in the comment section, and I look forward to seeing you again soon.